Rakesh Kakkar, and friends, a very good evening, and thank you very much for being with us in this series of discussions on urbanization. Actually, we call them conversations because the idea is that the main guest will speak for about 10 minutes, and then you can put all your questions to him or her and discuss. We've had earlier sessions, which the first one was kicked off by me, and then we had Mr. Ravi Chander, Mr. Shyam Khandekar, Dr. Vimal Patel, Dr. A.K. Gosai, and last time we were told that we could not carry on with conversations on urbanization without addressing the air quality issues. And who could we think of better than Sunita to do this for us? It's genuinely the case that Sunita Narayan needs no introduction. She's Director General of the Center for Science and Environment, and she's chaired so many committees for government. She's published reports on the poor state of water, poor state of solid waste management, you name it. I mean, and not just produced reports like many of us do, but followed it through. And if you were to judge impact by policymakers waking up and trying to do something, they may not actually do it. You cannot but listen to Sunita. So, there is this long thing, Sunita, but I'm not going to read it. It doesn't do justice to you. I mean, you're much above the Padma Shris and the reports and what have you. So let me just give the floor. Rakesh, would you like to say something now or at the end? Yeah? So 10 minutes, and then all questions. Please shoot all your questions at Sunita. You won't get a better person to answer these questions.
Welcome. I am delighted to be here. I think it is clearly an issue for us where we are talking about smart cities, smart urbanization. You cannot do this if you do not have clean air. It is as much as clean water, sewage, garbage, air has to be the hallmark of anything that we call smart. So I will talk to you about how unsmart we are today and perhaps how smart we can get in the future. We did a few tests in the recent months. We bought a portable device to test individual exposure to air pollution. And we did this because we believe very strongly that we need people in Delhi to get worried about what they're breathing. We need people in Delhi to get angry about what they're breathing. And we need government to take steps. We had Mr. Salve, who lives in, who is the senior advocate in the Supreme Court, needs no introduction. He carried the equipment for 24 hours, where he went, where he slept, in his car, in the court, and the pollution level of Mr. Salve was not something that he needed to see. His levels were way above what is called safe, and they were way above even what is being monitored officially at the closest point. Mr. William Bissell, Fab India MD, lives in Hoskas, travels to Hogla. His levels were way above exposure. Mr. Gurelal, who lives in Lodi Garden estate and travels as far as Lodi Garden and back, his exposure was really bad during night time in particular. We are talking about Lodi estate, we're talking about Lodi Garden. And it's very understandable. Inversion is a science that is pretty simple to understand. That's where the coolest part of Delhi is. That's where the particulates settle. So the airshed is one. It doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor, or you live in Lodi Estate, or you live in Okhla, the airshed is one. And Lodi Gardens were particularly bad. We did his monitoring in November, thinking it's really bad. We need to do it again. We did it in December, and it was equally bad. So the levels that these people are breathing, we then put each one of their levels. We took 24-hour exposure that they were exposed to. We looked at 24-hour exposure, which is at the fixed station, and it is way above anything that you would call safe. This is completely unacceptable. It is also very clear that there are now studies that link what we have in our air to our health. The Government of India has just put an affidavit to court which is telling us that what we are breathing is not because of vehicles, it is because of dust. Let me tell you that this is not dust, this is definitely toxins, and it's definitely coming from vehicles. And the fact is that this study that was done in 2012 by CPCB on over 11,000 children in Delhi found that every third child has reduced lung function. Sputum of Delhi's children contains 4 times more iron-laden macrophages, which are seen to be indicators of severe lung damage. So we cannot take this lightly, we cannot see this as bad. If you look at Delhi's pollution story, we began 15 years ago, we did leapfrog, we moved to CNG, we put out an ad like this, Ishar. This was ironically when the last time BJP was in government, we had put out an ad like this, roll down the window of your bulletproof car, Mr. Prime Minister, the security threat is not the gun, it is the air of Delhi. We put out an action plan, and we had given at that time the home phone number of the Prime Minister and his fax number and asked people to call. And this had helped us to build public mobilization against clean air. And that is why we suggested CNG, compressed natural gas, which when we started our journey, we were 10 years, 15 years behind Europe in terms of emission standards, fuel quality. Our diesel had 10,000 parts per million of sulfur in it. We needed to go down to 50. By bringing in CNG, you got that change at one go. So you needed a leapfrog solution. We did that. We managed to bring in a huge number of first-generation reforms, and Delhi saw clean air. So the fact is that we can do something. We did do a leapfrog, massive transition. You managed to bring down pollution. If you look at this, this is the trajectory of polluted air that would have been if you had not taken those actions. The below line is what we had. And these are the studies that have been done by different organizations to calculate the benefits that came because of the transition that we made to some compressed natural gas. But the problem today is numbers are up, dirty diesel is up, toxic emissions in the air are up. And the reason, and one other pollutant that is up, and I want to say this because I believe this is really what India needs to understand. Air pollutants are great equalizers. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. And the one pollutant that is particularly, which I think has been designed for socialism, is a pollutant called ozone. And ozone is a pollutant which drifts from where the air is polluted to the less polluted parts of the city. Now we have just bought an ozone monitor, and this year we will be monitoring ozone, and I can assure you ozone levels will be the highest where the Prime Minister lives. Because that's where Delhi is the cleanest. So if you can actually make sure that, ozone levels are deadly for our lungs. They're essentially a secondary pollutant out of NOx, which comes from diesel. So you have to understand that these are serious health problems, but it's not only Delhi, it's across India. And the reason is very clear, it is vehicles. Vehicles are the biggest source of pollution. The fact is, we have introduced cleaner vehicles, we have introduced cleaner fuel, but then we have added that many more vehicles on our roads. And so the total impact of it is zero. But it's also very important to understand that the rest of the world has not fixed the problem of pollution. They only think they have. Every time the western part of the world, the more developed part of the world, has fixed the problem of pollution, it has invested huge amount of money and technology in cleaning up fuel quality, in cleaning up vehicle technology. But that's when science kicks in and finds that actually the pollutant itself has changed. So I'll just expand this in 2 minutes to you. If you look at it, in the 1980s, all of us grew up with only one pollutant that we knew, SPM, suspended particulate matter. We invested in technology, cleaned up the fuel. We thought we had cleaned up vehicle technology. But then when scientists start measuring, they found that actually the size of the particles had gone down. So they had gone down from SPM, suspended particulate matter, to RSPM, respirable suspended particulate matter. Particles that you would be able to inhale. And then as vehicle technology improved further, you invested in cleaning up fuel further, you improved engines. Actually what happened is that the size of particles went even smaller. And now, as I keep saying, God never designed our noses for diesel. So our nose is designed for suspended particulate matter. It keeps out the coarse particles. But diesel particles are very small. But as vehicle technology improved and said, okay, we have to get rid of those particles. Particle 2.5 is the new contaminant. We need to deal with it. The way they dealt with it was to increase temperature. By increasing temperature in the vehicles, NOx levels went up. With NOx going up, you have a problem of ozone today. So now Germany has a new rule to have a DeNOx catalyst in its vehicles. So you keep increasing your investment in cleaning up. And while all this has been happening, you are now having a major problem of black carbon, of climate change, simply because of the sheer number of vehicles across the world. So the rest of the world has not cleaned up. But their method of cleaning up has been to invest money and stay behind the problem. We don't have that kind of money. So we need a strategy which will help us to leapfrog, which will take us much beyond, much faster. We don't have the money to be able to keep investing and keep staying behind the problem. So what do we do? And that's what I want to talk about now. 4 clear, big steps needed for what we believe will fix air pollution now in our cities. What we call the second generation reform. It's not easy. The first generation of CNG seems so much easier today. Today, it is second generation reform. What is it? 1, build a huge public campaign against the ill effects of air contaminants. 2, bring drastic improvements in fuel and vehicle technology. Do the grand leapfrog. 3, stop dieselization of vehicles. And 4, most importantly, without which the entire first 3 parts of the agenda will not work, is think differently of how you will build your cities. Plan cities so that you can walk, you can cycle, you can take a bus, you can take a metro, you do not need a car. So that's the 4-part agenda. I don't think I need to get into the details of it right now, unless you want to a little bit in the questions, and then I can expand and elaborate on it.
And please keep your questions short because I know there'll be many questions. Please.
Was that vehicles contribute only 6.5%, and out of that, some 60% or something is caused by trucks? Is that right or not? And the second question I have is, the bypasses which bring non-test cars which only use it as a thoroughfare to pass through Delhi, to what extent do they contribute to air pollution?
My own experience is, Kamal Mittal here, my own experience is that people are driven by either threat or greed. Now, as far as creating awareness is concerned about health, which is part of the threat message, I think we need to have some facts in terms of how PM2.5s and ozone create COPD and also create cardiac problems in terms of medical profession really stating out what happens. as far as I understand, you can be on a mineral water diet and yet have blockages because of pollution, because of these macrophages going and trapping PM2.5 particles and sticking them to the arteries. This is what I've been told. So one can eat the right food and yet have blockages. What is your take on clearly giving the message about the threat posed?
Thank you. Can you pass on the microphone?
Hi, I'm Anil Agarwal. I have a civilizational question. Is it not irresponsible for us to travel in our own private boxes, throwing out a deadly cocktail of poison? Doesn't it take away from our right to life? How, I mean, can something not be done in that field?
Please, can you pass on the mic?
This is Varun Agarwal here. I have a question with regards to the biomass burning. You know, outside Delhi, every home has a security guard. And as the weather gets colder, every guard is burning whatever they get their hands on, whether it's wood, whether it's rubber, whether it's coal, charcoal. And that smoke, as the colder it gets, the lower it stays. How much is that contributing to the exposure?
Yes, please.
I'm Jay Gupta. You listed out some things that need to be done to help improve the situation. What I want to know is that, we're a small group of people here. Obviously, people here care about this topic. But how do we get a movement going? Whose responsibility is it? I know we as individuals are responsible, and I drive an electric car, so I'm doing my bit. But who's going to carry this torch and build a movement out of this? Which agency is responsible?
I'll take one more. Yes, please.
Yeah, my name is Pratap Chandani. Have you measured benzene?
No, it's very interesting for us as well that the Ministry of Environment and Forests has put up a joint affidavit with the Ministry of Petroleum and the Ministry of Surface Transport to the Supreme Court. Our case is coming up on Friday. This is an affidavit that the government has put up. And they have resurrected a report which has been completely debunked. It was a source apportionment done by NEERI for Delhi, which showed that vehicles contribute only 6.5% of the pollution, as against 80% in Bangalore. So, and most of Delhi's PM2.5 came from LPG in this report. Now, LPG.
When was this report done?
This was a report done during UPA time, unfortunately. Okay, and unfortunately, 2009.
Oh,
2009. No, it's not that recent. Also, it was dead. It was a report that we debunked. We wrote to the ministry saying your methodologies are wrong, your assumptions are wrong. There is no way that no science will hold this up. And so that report was never really pushed. But now the Ministry of Petroleum has found that report to be able, which the Ministry of Environment has now put out. Now there are two very clear answers to this. One, I asked my colleagues to do a very simple calculation. I said, there are days of holidays when the roads are cleaner, when the cars are off the road. Is there any change during that day? So we have just done a correlation between holidays and pollution, and we find that there are holidays when we don't move around like frantically, like October 2nd, Republic Day, when pollution levels do go down. So there is no way, I mean that's a very simple, it's a very rudimentary way to be able to contest it. But the other fact is that report never looked at PM2.5, it only looked at PM10, which is coarse particles. And the report clearly has absolutely no, I'll give you one, and there is enough research that has happened in other parts of the world as well as in Delhi to show that actually vehicles are the key contributor. So I think it's time we put that controversy aside, and I'm hoping in court on Friday that the judges will also decide to put that controversy aside and tell the government to stop evading and stop pussyfooting around on such a serious health issue that it is time we took action where it is absolutely necessary. As far as trucks are concerned, and the bypass is concerned, that is definitely an area of great concern. There is no doubt that when you look at gross polluters, trucks are a major contributor to Delhi's air. There used to be times in Delhi when air pollution levels would actually dip. We would actually have cleaner air and we'd have time to breathe before levels would go up again. Now, in fact, pollution levels show us that all through the night pollution is as high as ever. So the Delhi airshed gets no time to recover. It has no assimilative capacity anymore. And trucks are a massive contributor. There is enough studies to show the kind of contribution that trucks have made. Now we at CSC as well as EPCA had gone to government asking for a bypass to be made, an eastern peripheral expressway and a western peripheral expressway, essentially to bypass the heavy traffic that comes into Delhi. We also got an order from court, which was an order which is an interim order, which was to stop any non-destined vehicle coming into Delhi to come into Delhi. But that is an order which is unimplementable. I have been out at midnight looking at trucks. There is no way, because in this country, trucks don't even carry a legitimate bilty. They don't even have data about where they're coming from and where they're going. Okay? So it is impossible to be able to manage that through checking at the entry points to Delhi. But if you had the bypass, it would work. Now the problem has been the Haryana government was to complete the bypass in 2009. We are now in 2014, 15. The bypass has not been made. The concessionaire who was given this bypass, DS Construction, has been absolutely ridiculous in the way he has dealt with banks and the money. For a whole year, we have been trying to get the concessionaire out, get the new banks in, to get a new, for the tender to be refloated. We were close to doing everything when the elections were held. The new government has come in. Now, as of yesterday, the new government has written to us saying that they want to reopen the entire procedure again because they don't believe that that procedure was right. So we are essentially again hoping that on Friday, the Supreme Court will say that enough is enough, that we need these bypasses made. We don't care who makes them. We don't care who gets the contract. We don't care who gets the bribe. We want the bypasses made. The eastern peripheral was given to NHAI. Land acquisition has happened. The road has been tendered and retendered and retendered. Now they are saying they will do it through an EPC mode. We have given a deadline. We've gone to court and got a deadline endorsed. So the deadline now for the western peripheral expressway is June 2016. For the eastern, it is June 2018. And we are hoping that we will do monthly monitoring and take the matter to court and take the matter to government and get these bypasses done. So yes, very critical action that needs to be taken. As far as your question is concerned, I think it's very important that we build this medical information. We have really been working with, as you know, Anumita has been getting teams of doctors together to essentially, they are the most powerful advocates in our view of explaining to people the health impacts. The trouble is that our epidemiological studies in India have been very weak. And in spite of all our asking, the studies are very few and far between. We have this one study that was done by Chittaranjan Cancer Institute in Delhi. We have a few studies that have been done in Chennai. We have a few studies which we use. There are enough studies across the world. Now, unfortunately in India, we believe we are unique. You know, our bodies are different from anyone else's. So, unless the study has been done on us, we won't believe it. But nevertheless, we are, I think your point is very valid. We need to understand it, because you're very right. Today, what is even more frightening is that you're no longer talking about respiratory diseases, you're talking about cardiovascular diseases. And for all the people who live along roads, all the people who are exposed to this kind of pollution, there is a severe health burden. And that is what I think, and we've been talking about this is the threat that we can use. This new equipment that we have bought, I love, because it's a small portable equipment. It allows us to let anyone be our guinea pig. You wear it on your back, you can keep it next to your bed, you take it in your car, and you essentially check exposure based on it. And we are now also asking that we need a much better network of such equipment, because all over the world, people are moving from these very expensive air monitoring systems to roadside monitoring systems, which will help us to know. You and I need to know. We need it on our phones. We need to literally have this information so that we can breathe. If you look at what we are asking for, one of the things that you will like, what we are asking for now is, this is something we have been fighting for with the government for the last 5 years. And finally we got it through this year. We've been asking for what we call an air quality index. An air quality index essentially categorizes the different pollutants, and it looks at good, satisfactory, moderate, poor, very poor, severe. Now, this is a government index, so we had to negotiate very hard. We use the word emergency, they use the word severe, but that's okay. I mean, the fact is, it is severe. That is what government classifies as being a very polluted day. If you look at the PM 2.5, it means at 250, 24-hour average, the air now has been classified by government itself as severe. In any other part of the world, that would mean emergency level. Now, government's own AQI says that when severe, it means it may cause respiratory effects even on healthy people and serious health impacts on people with lung and heart disease. The health impacts may be experienced even during light physical activity. So you have to understand this. This is now government's own health AQI, which has now been put out by the Ministry of Environment. We have now gone to Supreme Court saying, turn this AQI into a smog alert day. So as in other parts of the world, the day this 250, let's say it doubles, it goes to 500. On that day, all schools must close, and everyone who drives a diesel vehicle, that must be stopped, and all commercial vehicles coming into the city must be stopped. So you essentially use the advisory to get people understanding this is bad for us. That then stimulates action. So the Supreme Court asked government to respond to this, and the government's response is that actually children are not exposed because schools close in winter. Their logic is very sound. Schools close in winter, and they're only exposed when they travel, and when they go to school, the schools are closed and they don't get exposed. So we will be going to court on Friday with some contrary data. I'm hoping we'll get the judges to listen to us and say that this clearly does not wash. But the idea being that use smog alert days as in other parts of the world. But this battle to get this emergency measures, to get the government to issue a health statement has been critical. And I think it's a very good starting point. Particularly if I go back and I just show you this, keep that 250 in mind when I now show you the chart for the people who we monitored. Okay? Now look at this. So now look at, this is the exposure of the person on a daily average. 250 is what government has said is severe. Even light activity should be avoided. Okay? Light activity means walking in Lodi Garden. Just look at the pollution level now that they were exposed to. It's way above 250. It's way above 250. So that's clearly something that we will be using, the threat. We'll be building, we need much more better monitoring equipment. That is what we are finding today. Delhi has monitoring stations because we pushed Delhi to have it. Gurgaon has not even one. Noida doesn't have one. Ghaziabad does not have it. What we have to understand is you can't get rid of pollution by just simply not monitoring it. So we need to be able to monitor, but again, what we need is jugaad technology, because the low-cost technology that we had in the past was 10 lakhs. The new technology, one station is over 1 crore. So we need to find new technologies. This is where our science is not coming up to speed. We need good technologies in the hands of people to be able to monitor pollutants, tell them what that exposure is. That's when you will really see the impact. Last 2 or 3 that I had, and I'll quickly take them. One was the issue of biomass burning, pardon your question. Very important. But I think keep this in mind whenever you think of your guards. One, keep your SUV in mind, okay? Because it's a question of survival versus luxury. I am not going to say anything to the guard burning biomass, because that is because we have made sure they have no other source of electricity, okay? But any one of us who uses a diesel SUV has absolutely no business to be on the roads. So let me give you just one thing that I want you to see so that you understand the threat that is now in Delhi. This is the threat in Delhi. Can you see this? Just light band karenge kya? This is biomass, real biomass burning. Okay? These are NASA pictures. That was in 2012, 2014. Look at the fires in Punjab. Okay? Now, why is this happening? Because Punjab has gone in for massive mechanization of its rice harvesting. Now, when you do mechanization of the non-basmati varieties, you essentially get huge amount of stubble on the ground, and you have a very short growing period between rice harvest and wheat sowing. So farmers have absolutely no option but to burn that, and this is what comes to Delhi, and will continue to come to Delhi. Now, the only way that they can deal with it, in fact, if you look at it, Punjab and Haryana have at least made burning of rice straw a cognizable offense. We have not made driving a diesel SUV a cognizable offense yet. They put ads in the paper saying that if you are found to be burning rice straw, we will put you in jail. They have actually put 4 farmers in jail last year for burning rice straw. We are not doing anything in our own cities to be able to deal with this threat. So we will have no moral power or pressure to tell them to do anything tomorrow. The only way they can deal with it is twofold. One, to get equipment, which is available but very expensive, so they need subsidies for this, to get equipment to be able to sow, to be able to thresh and sow at the same time. Now, it is a wonderful piece of equipment because you actually add to soil carbon in the ground. And there can be nothing better than that as far as climate change is concerned as well, by increasing the soil carbon in the ground. But we farmers don't have that kind of money to be able to do so. The second possible use of it is to do rice power, to do power plants based on rice husk. And Punjab now has 200 megawatt of power plants running on rice straw, which they have set into operation. It's a small part of the rice that they use, but they have a subsidy scheme by which they're providing subsidy both to baling machines and to people to be able to put up the rice straw. So I think that's important for us to do. I will take the private vehicles in the next round.
Can we have the lights again, please? Yeah, I see a hand there, please.
I think the excessive focus on technology and science is really a red herring designed to gather funds for institutes like yours. I mean, the real problems for a country like India is misgovernance and the poverty it produces, which is the biggest violator of the ecology of the environment and the ecology. So, excessive focus on technology we know, for instance, from the Yamuna plan, so many millions and crores were spent, and today the Yamuna is still dirtier after the crores being spent. And I mean, you talked of vehicles. The biggest polluters are government vehicles, Sarkari vehicles, which are so badly maintained, and Sarkari institutes which gobble up land. A private university is run on a contract.
You got your point. I got your point.
Two questions. One is that the way you have depicted, you see, we are in a catch-22 situation. You know, we cannot get out of it for decades because trucks, etc., yes, but it is not only the trucks which give the pollution more, the cars are ever increasing, and what you have described is you keep on improving, you know, but when something else happens and you can't get out of it, so there is no solution. No, that is one question, and then the other is because we have to find solutions, workable solutions in our lifetime, not 40 years from now or 50 years from now. The second is, ma'am, about your concentration on Lodi Garden.
You and I will continue to run there, don't worry.
No, my question to her, because she herself goes to Lodi Garden, and when I saw that in the paper, I sent her a message or an email that, you know, and I am also Lodi Garden, you know, addict. So, and what you have given, that now also, Mr. Salve, you say his pollution level is less than that of Mr. Bhurelal. And then you are also saying that the PM's area is cleaner. I can't understand, these are contradictions.
Yeah,
Because
let me explain that.
PM's area should be as polluted as Lodi Gardens. It should be more polluted perhaps.
Thank you.
And
We have, if you're
No, very good,
we have 2 or 3 other questions, please. First here, Ms. Yaqub.
Ma'am, introducing myself, I am Sudhir Kumar Bhoi. Ma'am, I want to ask just only one question because we are only talking about these smart cities, all thing like this. But I want to say that nobody is talking about really eco-cities. Means like Rio de Janeiro, they have adopted such kind of things, and they have adopted circular flow land, huge management, such kind of. We are only just talking about this smart city.
Fine, thank you. Let's give the mic here. Please.
Yeah.
Well, I'm R.K. Day. The point is that the transportation is the biggest polluter, vehicle transportation, particularly diesel. To my knowledge, the taxation structure is in terms of cost to the vehicle. Do you not think that it should be on the basis of footprint of the vehicle? That would actually, because we're all competing for space on the roads. So the one who occupies more space should be on a higher taxation basis. So that's something that comes.
Yeah, there are. We're going to collect all the questions. Pichele, the lady here, you had, you wanted a question?
Lady. Yeah, madam.
No, that was at the back. Back and then there was.
I think Sunita ji just, by the way, I am Mr. Rawal, Ramesh Rawal from BAIF, an NGO working across India. Sunita ji was just telling about the express, this eastern peripheral way and western peripheral way. Don't you feel there will be a equal, let me put it, pollution for the villages around those peripheral villages? What will the impact on those?
Good
question. And secondly, if you go to some of the rural area where a lot of sand mining is going on, which is across many places, forget the other minings. If you see the trucks that they apply through the villages, also the kind of pollution, the other things that they cause, and the construction in the peripheral villages, say around Naida or Gurgaon, what kind of pollution they are causing. Have we ever thought of those villages and how to control those?
Sarojit Dudeja. Madam, recently Cambridge University has come out with a hybrid aeroplane with solar and petroleum. And in Delhi also it has been established CNG is equally harmful. is not less than any petrol and diesel. So why not to focus on solar based or electricity based vehicles?
Hi, I'm Amy Kasman from the Financial Times. I wanted to ask, when you showed the charts of the personal exposure of the people who were carrying your monitors, and you showed the kind of ambient air model, you know, the people's monitors was much, much higher. How do you explain that? Does that suggest that these ambient, the stationary government ones aren't working properly? I mean,
yeah, no, I'll explain that.
I have and also quickly, I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the background of the Supreme Court case. Is this the public interest litigation, and what is it exactly asking for? And lastly, I wanted to ask you if you have any thoughts about, I know a lot, people with young children are investing a lot of money in air filters to try to protect our kids from the impact. I know that Sheila Dixit's home was also found to have 16 air filters when she moved out of her chief minister's bungalow. Do these actually work or do anything? Thank you.
Next, Joseph. Yeah.
I wanted to just see.
Can you introduce
I am Sanjeev Gupta. I work with ENH Foundation. I wanted to understand, is there any country, any city like with complex governance systems like Delhi, where pollution level was similar, structure was similar, and those cities in the world have changed to a better, less polluted environment, and we can learn from?
Yes, please.
My name is Pratap Chandani. In terms of finding the solutions which are in our backyard, for example, we connect with thousands of cyclists in NCR, and we've taken up just one corridor, Vayu Vihar, Akshardham, India Gate, where most of the places cycling lanes are there, but they're encroached or in a bad shape. How do we get them restored? Just one corridor.
$1 million question.
Just one more, and then we'll get back to you.
When you were talking about proposing alternatives such as using public transport, if you consider the case of Delhi, if you see a large portion of those using private transport are using it for reasons of safety as well, which is a major concern. So, you know, how would you think about if you're proposing that as an alternative, and then, you know, how would the government respond in terms of providing safety? The second question that I had, not really related, is with the increasing amount of mobile towers, which run on diesel generators, and there are a lot of places where power is not very reliable, and I heard that diesel consumption for mobile towers is pretty high for running generators. What's the contribution that you've seen in yours?
Good, very good questions. Let me start with Mahendraji's question and sort of clarify something, and then I'll bundle some of the questions together so I can get a little more cohesive answers as well. As far as the Prime Minister's house is concerned, the point I was making is that it looks cleaner, and people who lived in Newton's Delhi also thought that they actually were not so badly exposed to pollution. But in winter, when we tested this time, as I showed you the data, we were ourselves stunned, and we went back and rechecked Lodi Garden again, because we could not believe the kind of levels that we were seeing. And we've gone, and those levels are much higher. And the reason is very clear. It is the coolest part because it has a large number of trees, and so the inversion impacts are the highest in that area. Doesn't mean we cut down the trees. Huh? It means we have to clean up the air. But there is no doubt, therefore, that the area of Delhi which we considered clean, you know, most of us who, you know, India is a very hierarchical society. So the attitude normally is, I don't live near a polluted area, I don't have to worry about it. Then we believe, I have a car, I don't have to worry about it. Our study, in fact, showed that even when you're inside a car, you're exposed to pretty high levels of pollution. You can't escape these small particulates. And that really takes me to the filter issue. The fact is, Amy, I just got an ad, I got a newspaper, you know, one of those pamphlets that they insert yesterday. where a filter company is basically quoting CSC saying, we are saying the air is so contaminated, so they're saying, buy our filters. I'd say no. I'd say yes, our data shows that they do bring it down, but not to the level that is considered safe. So if you still want to buy a filter and bring it down to some extent, yes, please do so. But, you know, my question is, I live in Delhi, I don't have the money to buy a filter, I'm going to fight to clean up Delhi's air, okay? And I believe it's doable, I think it's possible to do. I am not going to stay here, either leave the city, take a hardship allowance to come into the city, or buy a filter. That people who don't live in Delhi have the luxury of asking for or doing. People who live here have to stay and fight. And I am very clear, this is doable. So that is my other answer, Mahendraji. I do not want to leave anyone here with any sense that this is an impossible agenda. We managed to do CNG transition in 3 years. 3 years. We brought in the largest compressed gas fleet in the world in 3 years. We brought in gas, we brought in equipment to compress it, to supply it. Tata and Leyland, the two biggest dinosaurs of this country, actually produced buses that would be run on CNG. We rolled out buses, we rolled out auto rickshaws, we cleaned up Delhi's air.
No, you did not clean up Delhi's air.
We did.
Because CNG was not a solution.
No, I am sorry, Mahendra Raji. I will completely disagree with you on that. We cleaned up Delhi's air in the period when CNG was introduced. However, with the growth of the private vehicles and diesel vehicles, Delhi's air has become polluted again. So what we need now is a solution that can leapfrog us once again. And what we are suggesting is 3 things. They're not very difficult. And I want to take some time, Ishwar, and go through these because I think it's important for everyone to understand the solutions. I don't want people to leave here feeling despondent, okay? And that will answer a lot of the questions that were asked to me as well.
Could you say how we can fight diesel?
I will exactly talk about that right now. So if you give me a minute.
CNG is equally harmful. It has been established.
No, I'm sorry. There is no evidence to show CNG is equally harmful unless you are a diesel car manufacturer.
No, I'm not.
Okay? There is enough science, there is enough, please, there are enough controversies that this country lives only to have controversies and to have problems. I think one of the things we need as a society is to move forward and say, what do we do? Okay? If everything has a problem, then there is nothing we can do. I have a certain set of solutions, I will stand behind them and fight for them. If you have another set of solutions, stand behind them and fight for them. But don't tell me that you have only problems. Because I am beyond that now. I am too old for this. Okay? So, what we are asking for, let me give very clearly. We are asking for, first thing we are asking is this. It's not undoable. The last government, in the last report that it prepared and submitted, gave a report which this government has now accepted, which is an auto fuel policy which is too little, too late. Now what does an auto fuel policy do? It cleans up the quality of fuel. It gives you a roadmap to clean up your emission standards. What the government has proposed and what we are proposing is as follows. The government has proposed 2017 and 18 for the rollout of Euro 4 emission standards nationwide. 30 cities of India already have Euro 4. Nationwide rollout, they are saying, will happen in 2017-18. We are saying it must happen in 2015. Now, number of people have asked me about trucks, number of people have asked me about diesel. The fact is, if you can roll out Euro 4 nationwide in 2015, think of the impact. You go from 350 parts per million of sulfur down to 50 parts per million. You can put, what do you call it, DPF, right? Passive filters on the truck to bring down the pollution levels even further to okay? You're basically cleaning up your truck pollution that comes into Delhi. Now, why can't we do this? This is the best time. This government has inherited the best time as far as petroleum is concerned. We have been calculating how much will it take off the cess that the government has already put. Fuel prices are down to $50 per barrel, 45 today, okay? Down from 120. This is the time when the government can take its money and invest it into refinery. It doesn't even need to do this incremental business. It can go directly to Euro 6. Now, our roadmap that we are presenting is that you go to Euro 4 in 2015, you go to Euro 5 in 2017 versus 2021, the government has said, and you go to Euro 6 in 2020. Now, our calculations, and we are putting together a group of people who know Indian refineries, we're going to come up with clear calculations to be able to show that can we actually do this leapfrog and what will it cost. Because what it requires is for refineries to go from currently 50 ppm, and Reliance is already manufacturing it at 10 ppm. Number of state-of-the-art refineries in India capable of manufacturing it at 10 ppm already. All it means is for some of the older refineries to be upgraded. The government has put up a bill of 80,000 crores, which we need to get some serious evaluation into. But the fact is, this is the time when the price of fuel is so low, you can tax it and you can invest it into cleaning it up. And this will bring you major gains. It's a major game changer. And it can happen tomorrow. I mean, I'm hoping on Friday that the court will say, happens tomorrow. But I don't know if it will. We all need to push for it. You asked, can we have a movement? That's what we need. We need a movement which can push for some really hard measures, not get lost in, it's so bad, we can't do anything about it. If you look at this roadmap of India versus the rest of the world, you will see this is where we are right now, okay? Now this is where US and Europe come together in 2020. We are saying this is where we need to be. And we need to be there now. And there is no reason why we need to catch up with them in 2024. We can clean up our refineries, we can produce these fuels. Now the problem is going to be not the refineries, it's going to be your Tatas and Mahindras and all the automobile companies. I know who will fight us. Siam is the one who fought us last time. It was not the refineries, it was the automobile companies, because they're dinosaurs. They want to move when they have to move. And this is when they are already manufacturing these vehicles for the rest of the world. So if the tough battle will come to get the automobile companies to accept an aggressive move to clean fuel and clean technology. But that's something we need to do. We need to control dieselization, the second very big agenda. We are the only, I call this Indian style socialism, where the rich are subsidized in the name of the poor. We just did a major research study where we looked at the price of diesel and petrol. And even though there is decontrol of diesel today, because of the tax, the differential is still high. And this is when diesel is classified as a class 1 carcinogen by WHO. It's in the same class as tobacco, and we allow its use without restraints. Now, if you look at the rest of the world, France has decided to phase out diesel cars. Its Prime Minister actually came on record to say, we made a mistake. The French Premier went on record to say, we pushed diesel, we made a mistake. There is a recent order from the European Court of Justice which strictures to the UK and to member states on NOx standards, which will now require diesel to be virtually eliminated. As far as other cities are concerned, somebody asked me this question. Chinese cities of Beijing, Shanghai do not allow diesel cars. Brazil does not allow diesel cars. Sri Lanka, our neighbor, has the most progressive strategy for an car importing country. It essentially taxes diesel and gives very low tax on hybrids. So if you go to Colombo, it has got the highest density of hybrids in the world. You used fiscal measures for an importing country. What do you care? You don't manufacture cars. So you basically used your fiscal measures to do so. So
and yet, Sunita, you're only saying heavily taxed, but not banned.
We would love to ask for ban.
Why not?
I mean, Mahindras and Tatas are too powerful. I have given up on that. I'm just saying, tax to kar do. I agree, I shouldn't become a non-activist. We basically say ban, but we've been asking for a ban now for the last 10, 15 years. I have played every role to get it into government committees, to get everyone to accept it, and yet they are so powerful. They are so powerful, Ishar, that we had in a budget, there was an agreement to tax diesel cars. It was announced even, we were getting radio jingles where people were saying, buy your diesel car today because the budget's going to come and the tax will be coming. It was so well known that there was going to be a tax on diesel. Yet the day of the budget, the night of the budget, that tax was removed. That night of the budget. Now you and I know there are only 4 people who could remove the tax. So the night of the budget, it was removed. Okay? So it's very clear that diesel is something which is a very powerful, because the fact is it allows us for cheap motorization. Somebody will buy an expensive Mercedes-Benz and ride it on cheaper diesel. It's completely unacceptable. So we need to do so. But let me come to my last agenda, which I want to just spend a little. But all this that I have said, Mr. Mahendranath, I'm specifically saying this to you. I don't want you to believe nothing is possible. But I want you to understand that we need a hard action. It's not soft options anymore, but it's doable. But the biggest hard action is mobility transition. We cannot follow the rest of the world and clean up our air. We cannot keep investing in cleaner fuel and technology. We need a mobility transition. Why? Because whereas in the rest of the world, 100% of the people drive, in Delhi, even till today, only 15% people drive today. And we already have the kind of pollution and congestion that I showed. So if only 10 to 15% of India commutes by cars, and private cars take up 90% of the road space, flyovers are built and filled, Delhi has utilized 26% of its land area for roads. It has built 66 flyovers, pollution is up, speeds are down. But the big equity question is, if 15% of Delhi drives and it uses 90% of the road space, 26% of Delhi is built over, how will you accommodate the remaining 85%? So you have to do a different kind of mobility planning in your cities. Currently, we are taking baby steps. We are not doing massive augmentation of fleet. We need last mile connectivity. We need car restraint measures. You know, people keep asking me which has been CSE's biggest, most toughest battle. Has it been the cola battle? Has it been the pesticide battle? Has it been diesel? Actually, it has been to increase the parking charges in Delhi. And we have been fighting that for the last 3-4 years now. As of last 2 months ago, we got the South Delhi Municipal Corporation to agree to increasing the parking charges. Then East followed, but both of them have agreed not to implement it. So we still are fighting that battle. Now you have to ask me, when 15% of Delhi owns a car, how can you agree that this is to protect the poor of Delhi? And that has to be the transformational agenda that we can put in place now. And your point about bicycle lanes, that has to come in. Your point about safety has to be built in. Because if you do not have safe access, people will not bicycle, people will not walk, and people will not take a bus. All these agendas come together. But this is about a livable city. This is about a smart city. So you have to bring these agendas together to say you cannot deal with air pollution unless you reinvent mobility.
Thank you, Sunita.
My question has
Before
not
I
been
ask,
answered.
no, I'm afraid we've run out of time, and before I ask Rakesh Kakkar to propose the vote of thanks, I just wanted to say that, you know, the mobility planning also means land use planning, integrated transport.
Sorry,
I want to do that.
I want to show you this.
Please answer that peripheral expressway impact.
I will. Look at this, Isha. We put this data together. Compact cities have a shorter length, more walking, cycling share, and less CO2. We actually took city after city from Bikaner, Raipur, Shimla, Patna. We looked and we mapped this. So it'll be very clear. You're absolutely. I think it's a very important question. Let's be very clear. Delhi is a hotspot city because of the amount of pollution here. So yes, the pollution on the peripheral expressway will reduce Delhi's pollution because it will bypass it, but it will add to pollution in the areas where the trucks go. Now the fact of the matter is that we are already investing heavily into highways in India. So building an expressway for Delhi is not your problem. Your problem is the fact that Government of India is investing so much into highways and less into railways. So if we are serious about pollution in rural India, then we have to be able to move out of trucks into rail, and we have to be able to think also of indoor air pollution in rural India. And that's also another thing that is coming out. The latest health burden study is showing we have one airshed. So the fact is that if rural India has very high levels of pollution, which is biomass pollution, what I saw from Punjab, that will come to Delhi. If Delhi has very high pollution, it will move to Punjab as well. We breathe the same air. Urban, rural doesn't matter in this case.
Thank you all. It's been a very scintillating little over an hour. As Dr. Ahluwalia mentioned in her opening comments, this is one of the best attended sessions of this series. There have been 5 so far, this is the 6th. But if I may add, all these sessions have been very well attended, and this beats the previous record. So my thanks to Dr. Ahluwalia and her colleagues in ICRIER for this very useful, very informative, very educative, and if I may say, in today's session, very inspiring session. So thanks to Dr. Ahluwalia and a colleague for this organizing this series, and of course thanks to Sunita for her always highly motivational and highly inspiring talk with great amount of energy, even beyond 8 p.m. And thank you all for your very encouraging response and participation. And we will now have the next session in March.